They say that the only constant in life is change, but what if that change is unexpected and brings with it challenges that we've never faced before, which requires us to make mental and emotional adjustments in order to cope? So to share some tips and strategies to deal with adversity and how to build resilience is life and relationship coach Leah Sefor. Always good to chat with you, Leah.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us resilience in a nutshell. What would you define that as?
Resilience is having a skill set which gives you psychological strength to deal with the unexpected stuff in life.
Okay.
So, you know, the future is completely unpredictable. Events are going to happen that derail you. But resilience is that you have the ability to cope and to overcome. Yeah.
But why is it that so many people are so unprepared for these sudden changes or unknown events that just knock them sideways?
Look, I think that, you know, human beings are creatures of habit. We really do like to create our daily routines and rituals that are very safe. And COVID knocked all of that out. We suddenly couldn't live the way we wanted to. We couldn't leave our homes. We were isolated from loved ones. We had loss of jobs, loss of money, and loss of planned events, which I'm finding is a big shock for a lot of people. Their weddings couldn't happen.
Yes.
The matric dances aren't happening. Sporting events aren't happening. So people actually like to attach to those events as a stability measure in their lives. And if none of that is happening, it really hits us. So in a normal life before COVID, when those things were happening, a small thing could go off kilter, but the rest of those expected events would kind of hold us to keep us moving forward, if that makes sense. So right now there's no stability anywhere that we're looking. So it's why the unexpected stuff feels so much worse than it did before COVID.
It's interesting that you refer to the fact that these things are big events that we sort of look forward to, but they also become mile markers to say that we are moving forward.
Yes.
Because at the moment I think a lot of people are feeling that we're just sort of stuck in this semi-limbo and not much is happening.
Yes.
So how do we overcome that sense in a period where we may be lacking resilience and struggling?
Look, I think resilience is a whole different thing now from what it was before COVID, and I think we can't have a predictable future. We can't plan ahead. So we've got to get really into the moment of now and seek to far more focus on our emotional and mental resilience around how we are behaving on a daily, weekly and monthly basis in our lives. So, you know, dealing with resilience is really looking at the daily stress that we handle, which with the stuff that we know we should be doing, getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising well, definitely putting a plan of action into a day. So we may not be able to say what we're going to be doing 3 months from now, but this morning what do I want to achieve today? What plan of action am I putting in place today? And how am I accomplishing that in a single day? So I think the time frame is far more compacted during COVID. We don't have months to look ahead.
Yes.
All we have is the moment of now and this present week that we're in. So that's where we've got to keep our focus.
So there's an interesting link there in your response in terms of resilience and creating structure. So if structure, and that's what has happened in lockdown, has just fallen away completely, how does that impact somebody who may have been resilient or felt resilient outside of that system? When you sort of break it down and the system changes, that resilience that they may have felt shifts as well. How do you manage that?
Well, look, I think for a lot of people, the resilience was still based on external things. It was a job I can drive to. It's the gym I can go to. It's a class I can participate in. There were still external things. Now, we can still do that, but we're having to do it at home.
Yes.
And the problem is that people are really struggling with boundaries to do with home life, parenting, working from home, switching off tech. So if you had the ability to put a routine and structure in place before COVID, you've still got that skill set. You've just got to apply it in a very different way of how am I being a lot stricter with how I'm managing myself at home instead of waiting for that external stuff to give me the feedback.
Okay. Now, resilience comes with a few connotations as well of strength and being on top of things and being sorted pretty much. How do you manage those expectations with people who feel that they are sorted and strong, but then when they get knocked to the side, they crumble and they lose that sense of being resilient and have to sort of pick themselves up from a lower point?
Look, I think I always put resilience forward as in you have two options of how you want to respond to the events of your life. You can either react or you can respond.
Okay.
And reaction is a very unconscious, a negative way of handling an event without putting much thought into it. It's the unpredictable stuff comes along, and you are so unconscious and thinking about other stuff in your life that you're not paying attention to what's happening in front of you.
Yes.
And the minute that event hits you, you're now in that reactive behavior, and you will say things and do things that you don't really want to be saying or doing, but you're not thinking about it. And that's because you don't have the buffer of an internal resilience. So that self-respect, self-esteem, self-confidence really is an internal journey, and that's internal resilience. When you have that, and that is strong, an event can happen in your life, and now you're going to respond. You're not going to react, because you can see and recognize that it's triggering something, but you can then manage your triggers in a far more workable way.
Now, one thing that people do certainly react to, and no matter what state of mind, it's always going to knock you quite hard, is grief, especially the loss of a loved one, a breakup in a relationship, something like that. So how tough is it for those who don't have that internal resilience, or how much tougher is it for them to manage grief and very hard personal situations?
Look, I can talk about that from my own experience, is that I'd like to think I've got very strong internal resilience with the work that I do. And I went through a lot of grief a few years ago, which even 2 years down the line, it's still impacting me every single day. And I don't think that there's an easy answer to that question. I don't think there's a way you can just deal with grief. You know, otherwise the book would have been written and the procedure would be in place. What I can say is about taking it one day at a time, number one. Number two, it's definitely recognizing that the resource you have available is not consistent. So on the one day you're going to feel fine, and the next day you're going to melt into the ground. And then the next day you'll be coping better. So I think it's managing your expectations around how you think you should be coping when you are in a state of grief. If you've been sick, if you have lost somebody, you have to just ride that grief wave, and it is very individual as to how long it's going to take you to move through that process.
How do you get people to start developing some sort of resilience or recognition so that they don't feel like they really end up at the bottom of the heap every time something happens to them?
Look, resilience is definitely a muscle you've got to build. And we're not born with it. Resilience is something you have to learn. Some people, depending on the upbringing they had, are better with resilience. But for most of the time, there's a few things you can do to build resilience. So, like I said, a support system is really important. And not only having it, but being willing to hear feedback from that support system is really important. If friends and family are going to call you out on unworkable behaviors, don't be defensive about that. Be willing to go, okay, that was uncomfortable to hear, but there's obviously some truth in that, and I need to look at that. The other thing with resilience is the art of reframing a situation. So when an event lands in your life, you can either be reactive and be victimized by it, or you can see it from a different perspective and go, what is this here to teach me? What are the lessons I can take out of this? The third thing is to know that you do actually have a skill set to overcome bad things, because quite honestly, if you're watching this, you have so far survived 100% of the worst days of your life.
Absolutely.
You have survived all of the worst events of your life, and you're still here. That tells you that you have got the skill set to overcome stuff. You just have to have a bit more self-faith that you actually do have the ability to overcome resilience. You do have the ability to overcome all the hard stuff that has already happened in your life, and you will in the future. Resilience really is about focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't. People feel out of control when all of their energy is on trying to manipulate or control a situation that they can't control. So separate out what's happening out there that you can't control. Be very clear on what you can control within your own behavior, your own thoughts, your own actions. And this is where you want to work with a life coach who can help you create a plan of action on what you can control to build a stronger life for yourself. Like I said about resilience, the other technique to build resilience is paying attention to the daily behavior of the sleeping, exercising, meditating. But another way to build resilience is intentional stress. So intentional stress is putting yourself into uncomfortable situations where you are taking a risk or you have to get out of your comfort zone. So if you are scared of heights, you know, go and do a bungee jump or jump out of a plane. If you are scared of public speaking, you know, do a Facebook Live video or do a webinar to put yourself in front of people. So if you can intentionally put yourself in those situations, you are already building a lot of resilience.
I absolutely adore the thing you said about you've survived all the worst days of your life, and you will continue to do so, which is so great. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on resilience.